In this video, I'm about to show you how Los Angeles's $1 billion hotel complex got abandoned before it ever opened a luxury mega project so ambitious, so expensive, and so perfectly placed that it should have been printing money by now, yet instead it sat unfinished across from one of the busiest entertainment zones in America, turning into a half-built warning about what happens when global money makes a promise downtown LA cannot force it to keep. Some hotel failures happen very quietly. A bad quarter, a soft opening, a lender fight behind closed doors, a sale nobody brags about. This one happened in public. Right across from Crypto.com Arena and the Los Angeles Convention Center sat Oceanwide Plaza, a giant hotel condo retail complex that was supposed to help define modern downtown Los Angeles. Instead, it became a frozen construction site in one of the most visible locations in the city. Steel, glass, exposed concrete, dead escalators, empty window frames, fencing, silenced the whole thing sitting there like LA. Had accidentally built a billion-dollar screensaver and forgotten to hit play. That is what made it so embarrassing. This was not some remote development hidden in an industrial corner where only truck drivers and coyotes would notice. This project was planted in a location where concerts, games, conventions, tourists, developers, brokers, and politicians would all have to look at it. Every time downtown tried to act like its revival story was still on schedule, Oceanwide Plaza stood there in the background like a cough nobody could suppress. And the insult got worse with time, because Oceanwide Plaza did not just stall, it decayed in public. By the time the site became famous for the graffiti that spread across multiple unfinished floors, the project had already crossed from troubled development into something much uglier. It looked like global capital had started building a luxury future for Los Angeles, lost interest halfway through, and left the city holding the visual evidence. That is not just a construction delay. That is public urban humiliation. To understand why this story feels so nasty, you have to start with the promise. Oceanwide Plaza was supposed to be one more proof point that downtown Los Angeles was no longer the old punchline, no longer just office towers that emptied at night, no longer a place people drove through on the way to somewhere shinier. This was supposed to be the new model: entertainment district, luxury residences, premium retail, global branding, and a high-end hotel component built right where the city wanted to show off. The project was designed as a three-tower complex on a huge podium, retail galleria below, amenity deck above, condominiums in the towers. And, crucially for this channel, a Park Hyatt-branded hotel component meant to inject a serious luxury hospitality signal into the block. This was not a little boutique gamble. This was the kind of development that says, we are not renovating a corner, we are manufacturing prestige. And on paper, you could absolutely see the pitch. The location made sense. The arena traffic made sense. The convention business made sense. The broader downtown redevelopment narrative made sense. Los Angeles had spent years trying to convince investors, residents, and outsiders that downtown was maturing into a real, live work-stay play district, and Oceanwide Plaza looked like exactly the kind of oversized flex cities use when they want to prove the transformation is real. That was the dream. A luxury hotel complex would rise, rich people would buy in, visitors would stay there, retailers would move into the base, the whole block would gain status, and downtown Los Angeles would get one more polished talking point in its long campaign to become the version of itself planners kept promising. Instead, the project turned into one of the most visible, unfinished failures in America, which tells you something important right away. The dream was not small, so the failure could not stay small either. This is the key to the whole story. Oceanwide Plaza did not become infamous because the towers physically collapsed. It did not die because somebody discovered the concrete was fake, or the glass was cursed, or the elevators were allergic to gravity. The central flaw was financial. More specifically, it was the kind of global finance fragility that looks invisible right up until the day a giant project stops moving. Oceanwide Holdings, the China-based developer behind the project, was part of a period when Chinese capital flowed aggressively into trophy real estate around the world. For a while, that money looked unstoppable. It chased prestige, scale, visibility, urban symbolism. If you wanted to plant a giant statement project in a major American city, there were years when global capital seemed more than willing to help you do it. But giant developments built on distant financing carry a hidden weakness. The farther the money sits from the ground, the more ways it can vanish without warning. Currency pressure, regulation, political tension, debt problems, capital controls, internal corporate stress, all of that can hit before the lobby marble is even delivered. And when that happens, the building site learns a brutal lesson. The tower may be in Los Angeles. The oxygen may not be. That is what happened here. Construction began in 2015, and the project was expected to wrap by around early 2019. But in 2019, work halted when Oceanwide Holdings ran out of money or could no longer keep the financing machine alive the way the project needed. And that phrase, ran out of money, sounds almost childish compared with what it really means on a mega project. It means contractors wait, crews disappear, schedules break, lenders panic, vendors stop pretending, city officials start using careful language, and a billion-dollar development in the middle of downtown suddenly discovers that confidence was one of its most important building materials. Once that material is gone, everything else starts looking unfinished in a more permanent way. If Oceanwide Plaza had stalled on some less visible patch of land, it still would have been a disaster. But because of where it sat, the project became a civic spectacle. This thing was across from the Arena District, across from the Convention Center, in one of the exact zones where downtown boosters most wanted energy, hospitality, foot traffic, and money. This was the front window, the block you point at when you tell investors the city is rising, the kind of site that is supposed to help validate room rates, condo prices, and retail rents nearby. Instead, the front window got stuck displaying failure. That is a problem in hospitality, because hotels do not just sell beds, they sell atmosphere, they sell confidence, they sell the idea that you are staying inside a neighborhood with momentum. A half-built luxury complex looming over the block does the opposite. It broadcasts interruption. It tells everyone that at least one very smart-looking plan already blew up here. And investors notice that. So do guests. So do retailers. So do people trying to convince themselves downtown is only one more ribbon cutting away from becoming invincible. One reason this project fits the hotel disaster lane so well is that people sometimes reduce Oceanwide Plaza to those abandoned graffiti towers and forget how important the hospitality piece was to the original prestige. Formula. The Park Hyatt branded hotel was not a side dish. It was part of the project's status engine. Luxury hotels do a special kind of work in urban developments. They are not just another revenue stream, they signal legitimacy. They tell the market, this district can support serious nightly rates, serious service, serious branding, and serious guests. That matters for residences. It matters for restaurants. It matters for retail leasing. It matters for the psychological ranking of a neighborhood. So when Oceanwide Plaza died before opening, it was not simply that some condos failed to close or some stores failed to open. A whole hospitality promise disappeared with it. The complex was supposed to help anchor a polished version of downtown LA, where visitors could sleep, spend, linger, and help support the fantasy that this stretch had finally become seamless luxury territory. Instead, the hotel never got to play that role at all. The brand promise existed. The keys did not. The most revealing thing about Oceanwide Plaza is how quickly a modern luxury project can stop looking modern once the money freezes. When construction halts, time becomes hostile. Materials weather, designs age, market assumptions drift, security costs climb, public patience evaporates, and the story around the project changes from coming soon to what exactly are we looking at? That shift is deadly. Because a half-finished building is not neutral, it accumulates meaning. It becomes a symbol onto which everyone throws their favorite theory of decline. Foreign capital overreached. Downtown revival was fake. Luxury demand was overstated. The city overpromised. The developer overextended. Politics poisoned the pipeline. China's money machine hit a wall. Pick your diagnosis. Oceanwide Plaza was large enough to support all of them. And the longer it sat, the worse that symbolism got. By the time the towers became internationally recognized as the graffiti towers, the failure had moved beyond finance and into civic shame. Now the site was not just unfinished, it was visually conquered. A stalled luxury project had literally become a canvas for disorder. That is a brutal image for any city, especially one trying to sell itself as ascendant. Before the graffiti, people could still pretend Oceanwide Plaza was merely delayed. Troubled, yes. Stalled, sure. But still, somehow paused inside the respectable language of development. After the graffiti, forget it. Now the whole world could see what abandonment actually looks like when it reaches the upper floors of expensive ambition. Bright colors spread across the unfinished towers, and suddenly the project no longer looked like a temporary financing hiccup. It looked captured. Like the city had lost control of the site in both practical and symbolic terms. That is the moment when a development stops being a spreadsheet problem and becomes a cultural object. Everybody had an opinion. How did this happen? How was security that weak? How can a billion-dollar project rot in plain sight across from one of the city's signature venues? And beneath all those questions sat the larger one that always matters with hotel disasters. If this was supposed to represent the future, what does it say that the future was left open to the weather? There is something uniquely nasty about a hotel complex dying before its first guest arrives. If a hotel opens and fails later, at least it entered the market. It had a chance to test rates, service, occupancy, food and beverage performance, and public appeal. You can study the corpse, but when a luxury hotel complex gets abandoned before opening, the failure feels purer and meaner. All promise, no delivery. All cost, no operating life. All symbolism, no proof. That is what makes Oceanwide Plaza so haunting. Nobody can even point to a bad first year and say, well, the market rejected it. The market barely got the chance. The project was taken out by financing collapse and development paralysis before the hotel could do the basic hotel thing of opening its doors and seeing whether guests cared. That leaves behind a very different kind of wreck. Not a failed business, a failed becoming. And that is sometimes worse, because it means the only fully completed part of the project was the disappointment. After work stopped in 2019, Oceanwide Plaza lingered in that awful category of projects that are neither alive nor officially dead enough to disappear. That limbo can last for years in American real estate, especially when bankruptcy, creditors, foreign ownership complications, and giant completion costs all get tangled together. And that is another reason this story became so toxic. Everyone knew the site was valuable. Everyone knew the location was elite. Everyone knew too much money had already been poured into it to shrug and walk away. But everyone also knew finishing it would cost a fortune, take time, and require a buyer or financing structure willing to inherit a nightmare. That is not an easy handoff. By 2024 and into 2026, the property was still trapped in bankruptcy proceedings and sale efforts, with buyers circling, numbers shifting, and experts warning that hundreds of millions more, maybe around another billion, depending on scope and conditions, could be required to finally complete the thing. Which is darkly hilarious in the way only real estate can be. A $1 billion problem matures into a bigger one simply by sitting still long enough. One thing that traps projects like Oceanwide Plaza is how expensive almost done can be. To ordinary people, a half-built luxury complex can look like it just needs one heroic investor, a few finishing crews, and 6 months of hard hats. Real life is uglier than that. Once a mega project stalls for years, every decision gets more complicated. Systems have to be rechecked. Plans may need revision. Costs that made sense in 2017 do not make sense in 2024 or 2026. Contractors want protection. Insurers want clarity. Creditors want payment. The city wants security and progress. Potential buyers want a discount big enough to justify inheriting a mess. That is why prime real estate does not automatically produce an easy rescue. A great location helps. It does not cure chaos. And Oceanwide Plaza had accumulated a lot of chaos. Bankruptcy proceedings, unfinished construction, reputational damage, security failures, enormous completion costs, and the basic fact that downtown Los Angeles itself was no longer wrapped in the same shiny optimism that existed when the project first broke ground. By then, any rescuer was not buying a clean opportunity. They were buying a public headache with luxury branding attached. That is a very different sales pitch. Meanwhile, Los Angeles kept waiting for a glamorous ending that never arrived. The scoreboard lights across the street kept flashing, conventions kept coming, crowds kept pouring into the district. And beside all that motion sat a luxury complex doing the exact opposite of hospitality. Not welcoming strangers, not serving drinks, not selling rooms, not producing energy, just occupying space and broadcasting delay. These stories always get told in giant, glamorous numbers, but the human lesson is simpler. A development like Oceanwide Plaza is a machine for expectation. It tells contractors there will be years of work. It tells city officials there will be tax value and street energy. It tells nearby businesses there will be more customers. It tells hotel planners there will be guests. It tells residents there will be a richer, cleaner, shinier block. It tells investors the district is rising. It tells the public that somebody powerful has a plan. Then, if the project freezes, all those expectations curdle at once. What remains is not just unfinished real estate, it is mistrust. People start seeing every future mega project through the silhouette of the last one that failed. Every new rendering comes with an invisible question mark. Every promise sounds a little more rented. That is why these abandoned hotel complex stories matter beyond gossip. They teach cities how to doubt. And once a city learns that lesson, it does not unlearn it quickly. So what is the actual warning here? It is not merely do not build big. Big projects work all the time. It is not even do not trust foreign money. Cities obviously do that every day. The warning is that luxury hospitality megaprojects become dangerously fragile when their optimism depends on capital flows, political conditions, and debt structures that the city itself cannot control. If the local vision depends on distant stability, then the local skyline is more vulnerable than it looks. Oceanwide Plaza was supposed to signal that downtown Los Angeles had graduated into a new tier of luxury. Instead, it revealed how exposed that dream still was. The site showed that a premium hotel complex can have the right location, the right branding logic, the right urban story, and still get stranded if the financial engine behind it seizes up at the wrong moment. That is the real humiliation. Not that the building stayed unfinished, that the project made perfect sense right up until the money stopped acting perfect. This is the paradox of Oceanwide Plaza. The complex was designed to make downtown Los Angeles look finished. Instead, it became one of the most famous unfinished things in the city. It was supposed to help define a polished hospitality and luxury district around the Arena corridor. Instead, it became a permanent interruption inside that exact story. It was meant to show confidence. Instead, it became evidence of how quickly confidence can evaporate when billion-dollar development outruns the reliability of its funding. That is the whole case in one line. Los Angeles tried to build a luxury hotel complex as a monument to downtown's future, but before the first guest ever rolled a suitcase through the lobby, the money behind the dream collapsed, the cranes stopped, the towers sat exposed, and the city was left staring at a billion-dollar promise that never made it to opening day.